I'm talking to the men out there right now. How would you rate your caregiving skills? How do you think you'd handle it if suddenly you needed to take care of one of your loved ones or your wife? Now, I'm not just talking about cooking dinner and doing laundry. I'm talking about helping her shower, use the toilet, like everything. It happens more than you think, and today's guest is going to share his story with us all. I think we tend to believe that women are the caretakers, and often they are, but not always. Men are put into this role every day, and often they feel very uncomfortable with it. It doesn't come naturally to them like it does to a lot of women, but yet every day after day, men are stepping into these roles and they're doing what they can to help those they love. Today's guest is Don Strickler. Don is a certified long-term care professional that sells long-term care insurance products in multiple states. He's an independent agent, meaning that he works across multiple carriers to find the right fit for every individual's situation. Don has more than 20 years experience in this field, and he has just a wealth of knowledge that he's going to share with us today about the topics of caregiving and long-term care insurance. So Don, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Holly.
I'm really excited to hear about your story. And I want to just start with that. I know that you had shared with me a little bit about your experience taking care of your wife, Jean Ann, and your journey into caregiving with her. So can you tell us about Jean Ann and how that all came about?
Sure. And it was a bit humbling, quite honestly. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, talking about long-term care. But when I had to live through it, it was a real eye-opener. A few years back, my wife, she actually passed out. And when she fell, she broke her pelvis in 3 spots.
Yes.
It was an interesting injury because when she fell, she didn't know it. But slowly but surely over time, the pain became worse and worse to the point where she couldn't move.
Oh.
We had gone to the doctor, had the x-rays, and they identified 3 fractures. And it was one of the fractures toward the back of the pelvis that was creating almost all of the pain. I have never been so humbled in my life as to when I had to help my wife. I'm a big guy, I'm fairly strong, but helping her get out of bed was very difficult. I was afraid I was hurting her.
Oh, yeah.
And she was in great pain to begin with, so the last thing I wanted to do was add to that pain. So this fall and the subsequent pain made it impossible for her to get out of bed. It made it impossible for her to bathe herself. It made it impossible for her to use the toilet by herself. Those are 3 of the qualifying factors for becoming eligible for a long-term care policy.
Right.
This came at us out of the blue. I mean, one day she's a wonderfully healthy lady, takes a fall, and a few weeks later, she's basically bedbound.
My goodness.
So it was hard for me because, like I said, every time I tried to move her, I was hurting her. I was adding to her pain. And all of the things, walking her to the shower, holding her up so that she could bathe herself, using the toilet. She was unable to get up and down. She was unable to take care of the hygiene aspects of using the toilet. And I remember having a couple of thoughts, and like I said, very humbling. I've been doing this a long time. And the first thought was, thank goodness this is not a situation that's going to last for years, because that's usually what happens. And honestly, if my wife were 5 or 10 years older, that probably would have been the case.
Yeah.
So I was so thankful that there was a light at the end of my tunnel. Okay. I knew I could do this for weeks or maybe a couple of months.
Sure.
But had it been a many month or several year event, I'd have been toast. Okay. There's no way I could have done that. I would have needed help. The other thought that I had, and this was the primary thought, was, Don, you're not a very good caregiver. I mean, usually I'm a pretty patient man, but oh my goodness. And I think it's because I was going into an environment where I was not comfortable.
Yeah, right.
You know, we all have patience if we're doing something that we're good at. But all of a sudden, I'm thrust into this arena. I'm not good at it. And I knew it. And that added to my frustration.
I could only imagine.
So, you know, there's a happy ending in that, for the most part, Jean Ann has recovered. Not completely, because, and I don't want to get very biological here. I only had one biology class in my life and I struggled with it. But the bones in the pelvis, some of it, you know, it's multiple bones, but some of them are very thin. And this is why we didn't recognize the severity of the injury at first. They were hairline fractures, but the soft tissue that's attached over time turned those hairline fractures into true fractures.
Okay.
And because of that stress on the pelvis from the soft tissue, the muscles, the tendons, and so forth, it's never going to heal. She's always going to have pain. In fact, yesterday she went shopping, you know, did the Walmart Kroger combo trip.
Mm-hmm.
And today she's in a lot of pain.
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
So, you know, like I said, those were my two primary thoughts. You know, and a lot of people say, well, geez, Don, you sell insurance. Doesn't your wife have a policy? And that answer is no. She is older than I am. I'm not going to say how much. Okay, she's downstairs listening. But by the time I was in the long-term care industry, she had enough seemingly small health issues, but because of the compounding impact,
Right.
I don't think she ever could have bought a policy since the time I met her.
Right.
And, you know, this is not a sales pitch, because everybody doesn't want a long-term care policy. Some people don't need it. You know, if they're multi-millionaires, they can pay for that out of their own pocket. But you need to avail yourself to the information as soon as possible,
Yeah.
so that you can make an informed decision.
Right.
And I do tell people, there's no magic age. A great frustration of mine, and I've been doing this for a long time, a great frustration is when I talk to somebody that's 58, 59 years old, and I always say, you know, why are we having this conversation? What brought you to the table? Well, I've been reading about it, but my financial planner said I shouldn't look at it until I'm 60. And then I start asking health questions. And lo and behold, they're not healthy enough to buy a policy. 5 years ago, they would have been.
Yeah.
I got a little off track, but my mind just started to wander as I was talking. So
No, I think that's a really good point. You know, you're a professional in this industry, and, you know, you have all the knowledge and tools, but still it doesn't always work out because the health conditions are a real thing in qualifying for long-term care. I do want to ask you a question about that, because even in her case, it probably might not have triggered a long-term care policy claim because her condition was temporary. And in long-term care insurance, I know that the condition, not only do they need to have help with the activities of daily living, but it needs to be expected to be longer than 90 days.
right.
But I also know there's newer products on the market that are called short-term care. And I know that you're familiar with those. Might have been a great fit had that been available and had she been, you know, eligible for that back, you know, before the health conditions had piled up. I mean, talk about
Absolutely.
how short-term care insurance might have changed the situation for you.
It could have changed it dramatically. And that was another one of the thoughts I had. All of the short-term care policies been available 10 or 15 years ago, we could have bought that policy for my wife, Jean Ann. And I don't know, maybe they existed, but at that time I was starting my career and I had my blinders on. I did what my mentors told me. But you're exactly right. And I do get a little frustrated with the terminology that the insurance commissioners come up with, because just by the name itself, short-term care policy sounds deficient when you put it next to the term long-term care. In fact, it does the same exact thing as a long-term care policy does. It's easier to qualify for it from a health history standpoint. And that qualifier that you just mentioned does not exist. Your doctor does not need to believe or state that your need is going to last at least 90 days. So a short-term care policy would have been wonderful. I could have had a person, hopefully a lady, because I do believe they're better caregivers than men. I could have had a person come in every morning at a certain time, help Jean Ann get out of the bed, help her get a bath, help her go potty if the timing was right.
Yeah.
Do what I call the heavy lifting, okay? Because even though she doesn't like my cooking, I can cook for her.
Sure.
Okay. I can go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
But there are just some things that I think a professional is just way better at.
Right.
Then the other aspect of it is the humility aspect of it for the patient. I don't think Jean Ann really wanted her husband doing some of these tasks, the hygiene aspects of using the toilet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agree.
Nobody wants to put your spouse through that. And no spouse really wants to be put into that position.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So you're absolutely right. A short-term care policy would have been a blessing. And the rest of that story is they're very affordable relative to the cost of a true long-term care policy.
Right.
So I truly believe that I can find very meaningful coverage that will fit anybody's budget.
Yeah.
You know, unless they are truly, we'll just say, poor people. Okay. And by that, I mean living on a Social Security check.
Right.
And no assets to speak of.
Right. Right.
But for the most part, that's not who we end up talking to. Okay. There was one other thing I wanted to say about short term, and now I forgot. Oh, well.
Maybe it'll come back.
It's okay. Cognitive decline is covered by my long-term care fund.
There you go. There you go. No, I think it's really good for people to know. In like short-term care, I don't know exactly how long it's been on the market, but it is newer and really gaining popularity. It's not available in all states, you know, because you mentioned the insurance commissioners sometimes take a view on it that it is inferior coverage, but it is similar to but different than long-term care coverage in the fact that, like Jean Ann's situation, would have absolutely been covered by a short-term care policy and not possibly by a long-term care policy unless, you know, her condition or need would have been longer than that 90 days. There's room for both, you know, and I think it's a really good topic that people should educate themselves about.
You know, I remembered the other point I wanted to make, that is I now use the term long-term care coverage, okay, not long-term care insurance, because then if you are going to look at the letter of the law, I can't talk about short-term care insurance. But long-term care is care that is defined. Long-term care is defined as care that is expected to last at least 90 days. So a short-term care policy is going to last a minimum of 2 years, and maybe depending on how your care needs unfold, theoretically up to 4. It would never last that long, but it's a possibility theoretically.
Mhm.
So, like I said, because of the short-term care policies that are out there, you know, I can find coverage that'll fit anybody's budget.
Yep.
I really can.
Yeah. And I think it's so fortunate for people. I think just more people need to know that there are options out there. There's a lot of misconceptions, I think, in this industry that long-term care insurance, in the traditional sense, is very expensive. Can you maybe share just a little bit about some of the outside of short-term care and that change, but other changes that you've seen in the industry over your 20 plus years that have had an impact on people in this, how they go through these journeys, what options they have?
Options while they need care.
Or options even to pre-plan for that. I'm talking, maybe like hybrid type policies are new.
Yeah.
And I think people maybe don't understand what exists there either.
I truly think there is a policy out there that will overcome every objection, every objective objection. Okay. So some people just don't want insurance. And I get that, we move on. All right. But the hybrid policies combine life insurance and long-term care insurance, and they are designed, specifically for the people that don't want to pay a premium for a policy. And, the sweet spot to buy this is around 50 to 60 years old. Everybody thinks they're going to live to be 90. So they don't want to pay for a policy for 30 years and then die briskly and never need care.
Right.
I tell people, I hope that's what happens. I hope you never use this long-term care policy.
Exactly.
But some people, that just turns them off. You mean I'll pay that premium for years and years and not get anything out of it? So two things, I tell them, I said, well, you know what? I've owned my home for 35 years. I've never had a claim. I'm starting to recognize my home is bigger than I need. If I sell my home, my insurance company is not going to send me money back.
Right.
So what did I have? I had insurance, which in my world, I call it peace of mind. When I went to bed every night, I knew that if I got hit by the next tornado or lightning bolt, I had insurance and I wasn't going to have to spend tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars out of my own pocket. So the hybrid policies are designed for these folks that just find that distasteful, so that when you buy the policy, you have extremely robust long-term care benefits available. But if you never go on claim, or if you just use a little bit of long-term care and then pass away, there's going to be a death benefit that's going to return the full premium less any benefits that you were paid. Okay. So again, and it's not that I'm this really sharp salesperson, because I don't think I'm a very good salesman. I think I'm a better teacher than I am a sales guy. But because of the offerings in the industry, I can overcome with a product any objective objection.
Right. I think that's the big story of the long-term care insurance industry and short-term, as you mentioned, is there is so many more options than there used to be. And there is almost always something that will fit a situation or scenario.
Yeah. And again, the name short-term, it's big enough to handle more than 50% of all long-term care claims.
Absolutely it is, yeah.
So, a lot of salespeople throw out statistics. I don't. Because statistics usually, in my opinion, are used to frighten people into making a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I will share statistics if they ask about it.
Sure.
It's not a part of my pitch because you're either going to need it or you're not.
Right.
I don't have against the wall.
Nope. None of us do.
But if you were to look at it, and if I had the wherewithal, I would come up with this statistic. how likely are you to incur a $300,000 loss because of a home insurance claim versus a long-term care claim?
Mm.
I don't know what the answer is, but I know you're way more likely to have a very expensive long-term care claim than a homeowner's claim.
You absolutely are. You absolutely are. I have a background in P&C insurance. I can attest to that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So yes.
I was just going to say, I think, one reason that people don't recognize that is because when I was a little kid, I remember the insurance man coming to our house
Mm-hmm.
and my mom would pay him.
Yep.
Right. So I'm 5, 6 years old and I'm understanding the concept of home insurance and car insurance and life insurance. Well, long-term care insurance is fairly new. So a lot of our clients didn't really become aware of it until 10 or 20 years ago.
Right.
So it's a learning curve.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why my approach is more of an educator than a true sales person.
Yeah. And I think I'm so glad that you're sharing that and that people are able to hear, just the truth of what this industry is and how it has changed and that there are many options out there and they're not all costly. They're not all terribly expensive. So I think
No.
that's a wonderful thing. I will say, Don, our time has gone really quickly here and, we're running up to the hour here, but I want to end with a question back to your journey with caregiving, Jean Ann, and everything you went through there. Tell me and tell everybody, what is one thing that you learned going through that journey that just nobody tells you and surprised you about it?
I felt helpless because I was not prepared for it. And that might sound stunning because of what I do for a living. Okay. But until you're thrown into the fire, you just don't know what you can tolerate.
Right.
And it broke my heart that I couldn't help my wife without causing her more pain. And it broke my heart that I had very little patience. I did control it well. I did not snap at her, but when I left the room, I was like, oh my God, am I glad that's over?
Yeah.
And, I really think that was it for me, Holly. It was, you're just not prepared for it. And if you think you are, guys, we're talking to you tonight, or this morning rather, go put a 80-pound bag of salt on the bed and try to get it out. And try to lift that. That's about half of what most wives weigh. Get it out gently, okay? Or have your wife lay on the bed and not help at all. Get her up. Get her walking. Sit her down on a toilet. Just go through it. See how good you are at it. My guess is you're going to have the same kind of emotional response as me. I love my wife, but oh my gosh, was that hard for me.
I think we couldn't end on more true and honest advice for people. So, Don, I thank you so much for sharing your story and Jean Ann's story and just what that journey was like for you. It definitely, I know we're talking to the men here today, but it resonates with me too. I'm in this industry too. And would I be prepared for it? I probably wouldn't. Just honestly, I probably wouldn't be able to do that. And so I think you've shared wonderful words of advice for people and how we can maybe prepare ahead just by having an opportunity to have professional help with some of that. So I really thank you so much for that and for your time today. And for everybody out there listening, thank you for coming on this journey with us and learning more about caregiving and all of the challenges that we face. And we will be dropping another episode next month, so join us for the in-between years. Thank you.